Well, joining me now is the former head of British Bankers Association, Angela Knight, and writer Jordan Tyldesley. Good evening to you both. Jordan, if I can come to you first. As well as this scandal showing no sign of stopping anytime soon, it's also provoked unexpected reactions from people across the political spectrum, hasn't it?
It has. It does show no sign of stopping anytime soon. It's completely snowballed out of all control. And other customers are quite rightly demanding answers as to why their accounts have been abruptly closed without explanation. I should imagine they're snowed under with the amount of subject access requests that are heading their way. As to whether the reactions have been unexpected, well, yes and no. I suppose Nigel Farage's political enemies have reacted as one might expect. And the government, who are very keen to see themselves as the promoters of free speech, have seized upon it. I suppose it is quite unexpected in that they have seemingly sort of turned against the banks. But it's a strategically very astute move from them. But it's also, I think, the right one too.
Yeah, the thing is that Nigel Farage, as we learnt, was considered to be a person of interest. And these people of interest, as it were, they're the ones who could be manipulated, they could be prone to bribery and corruption. And so there is that side of it. And in your piece today in the New Statesman, you're actually saying it's not about that. It's you're accusing the liberal left of hypocrisy. Explain a bit more.
Yes, I think there is a level of hypocrisy there. You would expect the left to be quite compassionate and quite caring in this instance. You know, here's a man that has had his account closed without explanation and then had his confidential financial details briefed inaccurately to a BBC journalist. And we now find out that this 40-page dossier into the fact that he politically, disagreed, he has unfashionable views, maybe. And I find it quite concerning that the liberal left seems to think either, oh, this is a boring story, or, there's nothing to see here. I find that really absurd.
Andrew, if I can come to you, does it feel like that to you, that it's a kind of nothing to see here sort of a story?
There's quite a lot to see here, actually. There's several parts to the story, and it's not going to go away quickly. I mean, one part is exactly what has just been said, and that is under no circumstances should anybody leak the confidential information about one of their customers, one of their clients. It doesn't matter who that customer or who that client is. To leak confidential information is completely wrong. So that is an aspect which relates to NatWest and to its former chief executive. Then if you hop the other way and you hop back to Coutts, well, there I think that we start to look at two parts. Firstly, it is absolutely wrong, in my view, that Nigel Farage should have been asked to know or have his bank account closed because of political opinions. We live in a country which has long held the view that you may dislike what people say, but they have a right to say it as long as what they say is legal. And if we do not recognize the ability of people to have the viewpoints that they want, then we are denigrating our democracy, and it would be a very poor outcome that we would have. However, I'm just going to say something on the bank side, because it's not often realized that this legislation and regulations known as the politically exposed persons, and I should add that although I lost my parliamentary seat in 1997, which is a hell of a long time ago, I still count as a politically exposed person. That legislation and those regulations are rather broader now and wider and deeper than was ever the original intention. This was all about preventing money laundering, preventing financial crime, and recognizing that some people were in different positions. Okay, well, that's fine as far as it goes. But over the years, regulators and indeed legislators have broadened out both the PEP, the politically exposed persons requirements, and they have also started to bring into bear what I would call, I suppose, the purpose and the values which a bank and indeed other financial institutions have to express. And that is part of the framework which we all have to work in. They have to work in. And so there's something in there which, first of all, you have to question, has that gone too far? And secondly, as there is a reputational piece that a financial institution has to look at in considering its customers, its clients, where those customers and clients are politically exposed persons, you can see that you can get some very strange results. So yes, in this particular instance, do I think that Coutts behaved in the wrong place? Yes, I do. Do I think that the information should never have been leaked? Of course it should never have been leaked. But I do think we also have to recognise that the regulatory framework and the legal framework is not quite in the right place either. And you cannot condemn the banks if they're abiding by what they're told to abide by and people find themselves on the wrong side of the line. That's why there's other parts of this particular, I don't know, three-legged, four-legged stools, not quite sure how many legs the story is going to have, but there's more into it than superficially comes to mind.
So multi-legged, but Angela, if you can just, Angela and Jordan, if you just stay with me for a minute, because Lowry wants to ask a question.
I think we're missing something really important here, which is that the reason that Nigel Farage was debanked has nothing to do with the fact he's a politically exposed person. His opinions didn't go with the bank's values. So the question is, where do these values come from? That is the core. That's why it's so dangerous, because most big companies, as well as public institutions, are now doing something called equality, diversity and inclusion, EDI, and they have to demonstrate that they are have certain values, and these values are liberal and left-leaning. They're not democratic. None of us are asked whether we agree with these values, but that's what you can fall foul of, and that's why this is so important.
You see, I think probably lots of people, well, certainly of our age, will wonder, Angela, when this sort of thing actually started, because, you know, when I was growing up, you went along and you got a bank account and nobody actually asked where you stood on the political spectrum or, frankly, anything else. Do you have any money? Do you have a steady income coming in? Right, OK, you can bank with us. And that was kind of pretty much it. So
prior to the massive financialisation of our economy, which is actually another issue here. You know, if we had a public regulated banking system, everyone would have access to a current account. The person who I think is being a hypocrite here is Nigel Farage. He believes in unregulated free markets. And in an unregulated free market, a private institution, whether that's a bank or a corporation, can do whatever it wants, including deny someone a bank account.
Well, I tell you what, we'll come to Angela first, and then if I can come back to Jordan. But Angela first.
OK, so let me answer some of the questions. I mean, the first is that the law of the land does mean that everybody is entitled to what's called a basic bank account, unless you are guilty of fraud, and there's one or two other issues in there, which I think we would all agree with. Otherwise, you are entitled to a bank account. And I think that that is an important point that sometimes gets a bit lost in this argument. The second, and I think is extraordinarily valid, is the whole question of this so-called vision and values. Where does it come from? Whether we call it ESG, environmental, social and governance, or whether we call it diversity and inclusion, all of these have a point as far as running any organisation is concerned. I think that what has happened here, in more ways than one, is firstly, there are regulatory requirements that you have to meet certain of these requirements. That's number one. Secondly, as has been rightly pointed out, there's some sort of societal issue which moves in one direction rather than another. And therefore it is seen to, some would call it left, some would call it woke, but whatever it is, there is something that has moved us down that path. And the third, and you can't walk away from this, the third is that if you have people who are classified as politically exposed persons, then these requirements apply far more deeply, far more, what I call it, aggressively, I think, as far as they're concerned. So all these
stringently is perhaps,
are in the wrong place. We are in the wrong place. And now we need to move back. I'm sure everybody does agree we're in the wrong place.
Can I just come in quickly on this point about how we have all the institutions that are being taken over by, like, the woke left? I think it's important we address this point because there is this conspiracy theory that comes from America that says that we are living in the age of cultural Marxism. And it's a kind of anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that basically says the World Economic Forum and various other left-wing institutions are kind of taking over all of our institutions, and that the media and all of society is run by this secretive cabal of, like, left-wing elites. It's a very big conspiracy theory in the US. And I think there's a big danger of it coming over here.
There is also
Most of
no
our
doubt.
institutions are very right-wing.
There's no doubt that Stonewall, for example, is embedded in big organisations and ranks organisations, and they have an agenda, and that, I would suggest, is also part
I mean,
of what's
Stonewall's a charity that has a very clear agenda.
I just want to bring Jordan back in here, actually. Jordan, maybe you can actually sort of address what Grace just said there.
I agree with Grace, and I think it's very dangerous, this idea that institutions have been infiltrated by, bad faith actors. I think it probably just starts with corporate social responsibility, and it's just possibly got out of control. And they just see it as very good for their brand to look like these, big moral, ethical companies, when actually all these places want to do, whether it be clothing brands or banks, whatever, they just want to make a profit. That's all it is.
You see, Jordan, the other thing is that they would be a bit more inclusive if they were a bit more diverse, don't you think, as well? I mean, I don't know about you, but you look at the banks and these big businesses, and still at the top, it is, although there are women there, it is still majority men, and it is does seem to be majority white.
That's very true. It's laughable, really, and then it shows the hypocrisy again. It's all. It's a joke, to be honest.
All right, Jordan, thank you very much. Angela, thank you. Jordan Tyldesley and Angela Knight there.